Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. As usual, we're going to continue with our coffee break series, discovering the power of leveraging Altair's data analytics suite to solve various problems. As part of the series, we've started off looking at how to extract data from PDFs and from Excel files. And in our last session, we covered the ability to aggregate and normalize data once you have it in a tabular format. But for today, what I'd like to spend a little time with is just talking about how can we actually handle data now that we have multiple data sources? How do we combine it together and be able to work with it from there? So once again, my name is LaRue Brown, Senior Director for Data Solutions here at Altair. And for this week's session, we're going to talk about combining disparate data from multiple data sources. Once we've captured all of our data into a tabular format, that's one of the key challenges that we typically would face. But what I want to use that data to generate a final report or do something more robust with it, I need a way first to combine those multiple data sets together. This is often a challenge regardless of the system that you're using, but a lot of times you work with multiple systems or multiple different file types, and that makes it even more of a challenge to be able to combine those data sources effectively. Again, one common example and something we see a lot is you may have report data coming from log files, you might have some data coming from Excel, and you might have some coming from a database. Inside of a database, for those at least they're familiar with doing SQL queries and SQL joins, fairly easy for them, but for most folks, just that ability to combine data inside of those database tables is a challenge. But then I add on top of that the Excel file and the PDF and things like that, and the problem becomes exponentially more difficult to solve. So with our solution, today we're going to talk about with the recommender platform, the key aspect here that we're going to look at is something called Monarch. And what the Monarch solution gives you the ability to do, as we saw in our last couple of sessions, is to effectively extract, cleanse, normalize, and today we're going to talk about combining data from multiple data sources. And we give you this option as a platform that anyone and everyone can use. So you're not restricted or limited to just coders or just business analysts or things like that. Effectively, anyone who has access to the underlying data sources can leverage this solution. And once we've built out a workflow, we can then automate that and have it fully handled offline for us, so we don't have to physically be in front of the computer to run these processes. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this would look like for us when we're building out a workflow inside of Monarch. Similar to last time, I'm going to start off in the Monarch interface. And I've already loaded in a few tables here. I'll just kind of walk you through these briefly. In the last few sessions, we worked just with a single document in our load plan. Today, we're actually going to work with three separate documents. And I've already done a little prep work on these three. Again, just kind of aligning with the stuff we've done in the past. But right now, I have three different data sources, all that are talking about different expenses that have come up. So one document is going to give us our checks that have been received. Think of this as a depositing branch or location where we're able to process checks. So I'll have a documentation showing all of the checks that were received. A key thing to note here that this document will have the branch ID as a 4-digit code, and then the actual amount that we need in the final column, the amount that was received at that particular branch for this data was processed. We also have a separate document that will show the teller deposits for each of the locations. Again, a key thing to note here is that this one is using the actual branch location, not the branch ID. So you can already see sort of a problem there. The first document has the branch ID. This one has the branch location. A second thing you might notice is that this is down to the individual teller transaction level versus this document is down to the actual branch location, the summarized totals for that branch location. So that's where you'll see an aggregation done to this teller table that'll show me now just the actual branch location and then the total amount for that given location versus the individual line items. Again, if you're not familiar with this section, how I actually was able to transform this individual item table to a group item where I grouped off of the locations, please refer back to just our previous session where we talked about aggregating data. But the key component here is that I'm going to have this third document. And notice in this file, this is basically just information about the branches themselves. So all the information to the right don't really need for this particular use case. But what is of importance here is that we have a branch ID, which we saw in our checks received table, and I have a branch name, which we saw in our teller deposit table. So you can already kind of see what's going to happen here. We're going to use this as an intermediate table to combine the checks received and the branch information off of that branch ID. Then once I have that, I'll also by default have the branch location associated with it that I can then use to join in this other table. Another key thing to note before we dive in is that these are all coming from three different data sources. Again, we talked about in our last two sessions generating data extractions from PDF and text files. It just so happens that this document is a PDF, this one is a text file, and this one is coming from Excel. Again, it doesn't matter the source. These could very easily be database tables or any other tables for that matter. But in our case, we're working with a text file, a PDF, and a Excel file. So let's go ahead and start by combining these. Last time we looked at the transform operation when we went to do our aggregation. This time we're going to use the combine operation if I need to join or append tables together. So when I click on combine, it's going to give me two different options. Today we're going to focus mostly on the joins, but just note if you do need to stack tables one on top of the other, there's an append option for that as well. So the perfect use case there is I have an Excel workbook and I'll have different tabs for different periods of the year. And I want to be able to combine those all into one single report. No, the column name should be the same. I'm just combining multiple tabs into one. This append operator works fairly well for those. In our case, we want to join two tables side by side where there's a matching key. And we talked about what those keys would be. In our case, the branch ID and the branch name. I want to be able to actually join those two tables together side by side where there's a corresponding match in both of the tables. So in my case, I'm going to use the join operation. And it's going to ask just which tables I want to use to join. As it states here, you can drag and drop any table from your load plan over to the table, or you can just simply double click on it. Either one works just fine. But once I have a left and a right table populated, there'll be an option here, click to join. When I select this, it's going to bring up a configuration menu that allows me to select what exactly I want to keep from the two tables. For those that are not familiar with doing joins, again, we make the process a lot easier for you. You can actually use this thing called recommend keys. And what this will do, this will give you a recommendation on what's the best key to join in from the left and from the right table. So if I were to select this, you see it's telling me branch ID from the left and from the right is the best overall match. It does this analysis not only by the name of the attribute, but also by the data type. And it does an analysis to see how many of the data points actually would result in a match. So that's why when I show the heat map, you see those various percentages that are next to it. It's giving you an overall score of how effective that overall mapping would be. Okay. Also note you can do multiple keys here. So if you have a multi-key join that you need to perform in a table, you can add as many as you would like. Second to last thing I'll point out here is that the default will be that all the columns we took from both the left and the right tables will come along with us. But as I mentioned to you before, our branch information table has things like the branch address, the phone numbers, who the managers are, etc. I don't really need any of this information. For my analysis, I'm solely using this as an intermediate table to join the left and the right table. So I don't want to bring in any of those columns. So I'm going to just deselect all, and I only want to incorporate the branch ID and the branch name from this left table. Similarly, from the right table, I no longer need the branch ID or the totals. This amount, all I really want is just that final amount for the checks received. This is the one that we're using for our overall analysis. So just to recap again, I'm taking the branch ID and the branch name from that left table, which is coming from our branch information Excel workbook. And I'm combining that with our right table that has our checks received, again, coming from our text doc, where I'm pulling just the actual checks received amount. Notice that I am using the branch ID as my joining key, but I'm not including it in my final result. So again, another key thing to note, the items that you're using to actually link the tables together are going to be that key icon on the right-hand side of the respective columns. And then the check mark is showing which columns will actually appear in our data set. To equate it back to a SQL query, this would be more sort of a select star or a select, and you would name the specific attributes that you would want to actually select. And you may have a join clause later on where you're joining off of these different attributes in the table. So that's similar type of workflow, but now just a more easier way to achieve the same thing. Okay, when I'm satisfied with that, I can select OK, and it's going to automatically join those two tables for me. Now, just like we did see in our last session, anytime you do a transformation of a table, whether it be a transform like we looked at last time, or in this case, a combination, you still retain the underlying tables. So I don't lose those tables that I had from before. If I did some additional work there, if I want to use these for follow-on processing, I still have the ability to do so. But now what I just have is a combined table up top. And one thing we'll notice is that I can combine multiple tables together. So if even though I've joined these two together, I now want to bring in that teller deposit table. I can do that here as well. So I can actually stack multiple joins on top of each other. You're not limited to just those two tables. You do as many tables as you want. You just do them in pairs. We'll do the process the same as we did last time. This time I'll just do it a little quicker. This time I know the key is going to be the branch name from both the left and the right column. And again, I only need that amount column from the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK on that. And with that, I'll get my finalized table that'll have um, the checks received from our checks received document, and I'll have our teller deposits from our secondary document all combined with our branch ID and branch name that came from our Excel file with our branch information overall. And I'm able to retain all of this information again fairly easily within Monarch. Just like we talked about again last time, the other great thing is once I build this logic or this process, I can reuse it as often as I like. So when I want to rerun this on next month's reports, all I would simply do is either I can automate this completely with our automation component, or I can just replace the files that these are pointing to, and all of those changes will automatically propagate up. Allowing for it to show you the finalized results. So again, the key concept is you build the model once, reuse it as often as you'd like. Okay. And so with that, that's again a high-level overview of just how we can leverage our RapidMiner solution, specifically Monarch, to combine data from multiple disparate data sources. So where do we stand from here? Again, for those of you that are already leveraging Altair software with units, you have access to this software today. So feel free to go to the Altair One Marketplace. You can download and try out Monarch or any of the other applications we've talked about thus far in this series. For our next session, again, we do these every 2 weeks. Our next session, we're going to look at a specific use case. We're going to talk about how to extract data from a payroll report or a payroll extraction use case, which is a fairly common one of the key ones that we use with the Monarch solution. And of course, if you have additional questions, always feel free to reach out to Jasmine. She is the representative for Aero and Defense customers. Anything from the data analytics side of the house, she'll be able to address further. If you want to learn more about what we've talked about in any of these sessions, or just the capabilities of our platform as a whole, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're looking forward to chatting with you soon. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining today, and I will see you in our next session. Thanks again.